Welcome back to Short Thoughts with Mary. I'm Mary, obviously, and today I am going to talk about change. Why do we need it? And how sometimes there's a lesson to learn within it. So, obviously, let me just start off right here in front. Not all change is good. And in the moment, we all think it's bad. Nobody likes change at all. If you do, you deserve an award because I think you're a rare specimen at that point because anybody I meet hates it. That being said, there is change that is difficult to go through, and I will talk about that later. But there is sometimes needed shifting, basically. So I've discussed this before. I am a hairstylist, and the salon I was at, or am at, we had to move salons due to our CEO purchasing a building instead of renting it. So he moved us to the purchased one, and we're at a standalone building rather than a storefront. And so we all had to temporarily move for a minute to different salons. And me and my bosses went to Salon B. And I am one that will gripe, moan, kick, scream basically at that point. I am a baby when it comes to change. I like my own way. I don't like to move. I don't like to shift around. So when this came about, I threatened to quit even. I was willing to throw in the towel. And luckily, hindsight, I didn't. At the time, though, when we went to Salon B, I stayed in the corner, basically stayed in the shadow of my boss, and didn't talk to anybody because I didn't want to. I didn't want to make new friends. I didn't want to find a new parking spot because Lord knows that's mental math that I can't handle. I didn't want to think about anything other than the fact that I was not where I was initially put. And so I was going to be just a big old baby. Regardless, I was with my boss and at Salon B and in her shadow, basically following her around by her tail end. And that eventually got me the nickname of Little Duck. Along with the fact that our salon, Salon A, is located next to a duck pond, so that kind of helped the nickname a little bit, but mostly just because I followed her around by her tail, basically, and quacked at her every step of the way. While I was at Salon B, I started becoming more comfortable and started being more friendly and talked more and eventually started gaining more friends and eventually even gained a new mama duck. And found out that one of the other stylists that's at Salon B is basically my twin, just different age, basically. And I would follow her around like a duck and quack at her, and I still, to this day, we don't work together, like at the same salon, but we hang out, and I still call her Mama Duck, and that's what she'll always be. And I realized in that moment after I got really close with her, I didn't admit it to them. Of course, they all knew, but I realized that I was very sad. I was gonna be very, very sad leaving and going back home because that was a lot of new friends and new people that I didn't want to lose. And in that moment, I did realize this was a change that needed to happen because I gained so much from it. I gained experience as a hairstylist because they are all so much well versed in that industry. They have a lot more experience than I do, being a year in, and they're, 15, 20, 30 years in. I also gained, like you said, friends and even a best friend out of it. And I'm so grateful for it. I may have been a big old baby and may have had to be crabby for a couple of weeks, but I was able to gain so much from it. So that was a lesson there. And the lesson out of the whole thing because we weren't there for very long. We were only there for 2 months. I have a rule where I don't get close to people within 3 before 3 months. It's just the way it is, and I'll explain that in a later episode. But for now, that's just all you need to know is that I have that rule. I don't like to get close to people. I tell them the bare minimum, and that's it. But these people lovingly weaseled their way into me, and I was able to get close with them quick. And my walls are still up and will be and always are, but especially for the one, for Mama Duck, she broke it fairly quickly. And sometimes rules need to be bent for people, especially because not everybody's the same. Not everybody is untrustworthy. And I don't, I'm not a positive person. I'm very realistic in how people are and how people act. So saying that I don't get close to people within 3 months, there's a reason for it. But that was part of the lesson, was that not everybody is the same. And there's a lot of genuinely great people out there, especially at Salon B and mine, but change is okay in that instance. There's other instances too where it's not good, and it wasn't good for a long time. I had a very good friend growing up. She and I were as tight as could be, hung out not every day, but as much as a kid could, and without our parents getting mad at us. And we would make memories together by playing video games and stuff. She was very girly girl, actually. I was very much tomboy, but she adjusted to me. So I appreciated it. But, we would go and play video games or play outside or go biking, or especially when we got into high school and I was driving more, we would go to the park and camp, or not camp, but hammock and stuff. And we're very close. And after school, people grow, people evolve. She started going down a different path, not a bad one, just different. And I did too. And we didn't talk quite as open as we used to, had been at that point, and we didn't enjoy hanging out as much anymore. And neither one of us had, especially since we had grown up with each other at that point, neither one of us had broken off a friendship. Nor do you really ever hear people of doing that. Normally, especially in this day and age, it's kind of just ghosting. But when you're friends with somebody for so long, you can't exactly just not answer their texts or calls. Unless you're a real bee. And then that's a different story. But for us, we didn't do that. I had discussed it with a different friend of mine because I felt terrible about it. I felt like that, since we were friends for so long, we should be, enjoying hanging out and stuff, but we weren't. Neither one of us. It wasn't that we fought or anything like that. We couldn't agree on doing anything anymore, and she was more boyfriend focused, and at the time I was single. Every time I was always single, but that's neither here nor there. It was just the way it was. She had a different life, and I was kind of in the same groove as I had always been. And the friend I was discussing this with, and I don't discuss my friends to each other or about each other unless I'm in crisis, basically. Friend that I was talking to said she would have rather I broke it off because if it were her, she wouldn't want to be thought of as a burden. And in that case, the lifelong friend was to me. And it was sad, and it was hard to do, and I think she understood, and it was needed. Now, we had our time apart. It was after COVID that we finally kind of reconnected and, learned more about each other, and heard stories about, because she had moved away for a while, and she was telling me about that, and I was telling her about my career path that it was quite a switch up, and it was good. It was fine. So the lesson there is as stupid as this is going to sound, is sometimes people need to be apart to grow, and that's okay. Even if you've known them forever, sometimes it's okay to let them go. And going down that path of it being hard, there is some adjustments that's not easy at all. It takes a long time to transition from one life to another, and that is death. And that's one that's a heavy topic, a hard topic. To start slow and easy, an animal dying, especially as a kid, I feel like, but any animal at any age is hard because you have them for so long, especially as a dog or a cat. If you have a dog or a cat or a parrot or, one of those kinds of animals that live a long time, when they pass away, it's losing a family member, or almost like losing a family member. And it's hard, and, you come into the house every day, and it's, in my case with dogs, you come into the house every day and that dog is there and it's wagging its tail, it's ready for you, it's so happy to see you, and then one day it's not. And it's quiet in the house. And it's hard to deal with in that moment. And then there's the more of a devastating one is a family member, a parent, or siblings or whoever, or a friend passing away. And that is incomprehensible. It's heart-shattering pain. And that transition, I know I said in the beginning, you need to stay positive. You can't. Not in that moment. Not for a long time after that moment either. We can say as Christians, we'll see them again, and that is true. And thank God for that. But in that moment, it is mind boggling on how your life can even continue without them. And it's eventually, like I said, eventually we will see them again, but it's a change that takes a long time, and that just takes a lot of growth from you and talking to families and friends, sometimes therapy. In that case, like I said, I'm not one who's going to do it, but sometimes it's needed, especially in those cases. So, like I said, there's multitudes of change, good, bad, devastating, and minor. There's, your coffee isn't brewed exactly how you want, and that just changes the day up. And I, I think most of the time we do need to stay positive, and I can say this as one that can't seem to practice what they preach, because I'm not a positive person. I'm quite negative, actually, or as I like to say, I'm very realistic. And luckily, my boss, who I stuck to the hip with going to Salon B, she's very positive. So anytime I do have a crisis that comes about, or at least I think of it as a crisis, I'll go to her, and she's able to somehow make that into a positive outlook, or an optimistic. She'll have some optimistic view regarding it. And it does help hearing that. Sometimes we think, well, there's nothing that can be said to make this better, but sometimes there is. And those kinds of people you do need to keep around, because if you have too many negative people, it starts to wear you out. You start to get thin and depressed, and no one wants to have that. You need to look on the bright side. And so I'm not sure how we overcome change necessarily. I think it's just being ready for it, being ready for the inevitable. It's going to happen. What it is, or when it's going to happen, that's not up to us to know. But don't always think of it as the worst thing ever, because sometimes you'll gain a new friend out of it. Sometimes you'll gain a best friend out of it. Sometimes you'll gain grown friend out of it. And sometimes you'll gain an experience out of it. You know, a new job can give you a new experience, new money, more money. So don't worry too much. You can worry, but just because it's happening doesn't mean it's gonna destroy your life. And you've always got friends or family or somebody to talk to be there for you. You've got this. It's okay. Just breathe in, breathe out, and you'll eventually get to the other side. And you'll eventually learn the lesson you needed to learn that time. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. And don't worry, you'll be okay. One step at a time, one day at a time. If you ever have any questions regarding either my life or how to get through something, or just, these short thoughts don't have to come from my brain every time. So if you do have a discussion, just post it in the comments below. I'll do the classic YouTube thing, like, subscribe, all the fun things. And I will see you all next week, or I guess I will talk to you all next week, hopefully about something interesting again, and maybe with more stories. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye bye.